the sound comes first. A voice from the past, woven into the very fabric of American memory. It's a voice preserved not on digital files, but on crackling vinyl and magnetic tape. A voice with a distinct Bostonian cadence, crisp and confident, slicing through the static of history. It speaks of new frontiers, of asking what you can do for your country, of passing a torch to a new generation. It is the voice of President John F. Kennedy. Now picture an image, a black and white photograph so iconic it feels like a dream. A handsome, vigorous young president, his hair tousled by the sea breeze as he stands at the helm of a sailboat. He is the very picture of vitality, of command, a symbol of a brief, shining moment in time that we have come to call Camelot. It was a myth, of course, a perfectly polished brand of hope and glamour, but it was a myth the world desperately wanted to believe in. Then the image shatters. The monochrome past dissolves into the vibrant, chaotic, saturated color of the 21st century. The sailboat becomes a sleek, modern paddleboard. The setting is still the water, but the man is different. Or is he? The face is uncannily, breathtakingly similar. This is John Bouvier Kennedy Schlossberg, Jack as the world knows him. He is the only grandson of that martyred president. On the surface, it's a simple, striking parallel, but look closer. This is not a tribute, it's a remix. It's a conscious act of translation. He is taking the raw data of his lineage and running it through a new filter. The filter of a generation that communicates in memes, that blurs the line between public and private, that trusts authenticity over polish. What is it truly like to inherit a legend in an age that instinctively distrusts legends? The question is no longer just who is Jack Schlossberg. The question is, what is he doing to the Kennedy legacy? Is this an homage or a hostile takeover of the family brand? We open in the thick of a moment that feels both historic and jarringly modern. The year is 2020. The Democratic National Convention is a virtual affair, a tapestry of Zoom calls and pre-recorded speeches. Suddenly, he is there on screen alongside his mother, Caroline Kennedy. He is 27 and he delivers a crisp, impactful message, deliberately invoking his grandfather's new frontier. But this is not a broadcast from the past. It's a targeted message, a signal to his generation. For a moment, the world sees the air, but what they are really seeing is a test case. A young man standing at the crossroads of myth and modernity, grappling with a monumental choice. Does he restore the kingdom of Camelot, or does he burn it to the ground to save his family's name? The story of Jack Schlossberg does not begin with his birth. It begins with the myth he was born to inherit. The myth of Camelot. It was born from the relentless ambition of his great-grandfather, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., a tycoon who forged a dynasty with the singular goal of placing his son in the White House. It found its vessel in John F. Kennedy, a man whose wit and charisma, paired with the impossible glamour of his wife Jacqueline, created an era of intoxicating hope. Camelot was the White House as a center for the arts, the space race as a national adventure, politics as a noble calling. It was a perfect sun-bleached image of progress and American grace. But the myth was always a fragile construct, casting a long, dark shadow. The Kennedy story is as much about unspeakable tragedy as it is about triumph. The public called it the Kennedy curse, a relentless misfortune that stalked the family. The death of the eldest son, Joe Jr., in World War II, the secret lobotomy of his sister, Rosemary. Then the cataclysm in Dallas, November 22, 1963. The assassination of JFK was a national trauma, a wound that has never healed. It ripped the heart out of Camelot, plunging the nation into grief. For the family, it was a private horror made public, symbolized forever by the image of 3-year-old John Jr. saluting his father's casket. The darkness continued with the murder of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968, a second devastating blow that seemed to confirm the family was star-crossed. This is the gilded cage Jack was born into, a world where every success is measured against the past, and every misstep is seen as another chapter in the curse. His mother, Caroline, the sole surviving child of JFK and Jackie, understood this better than anyone. She experienced the entire saga from the inside. Her life's mission, taught to her by a mother desperate to protect her children, was to find a life outside the myth. Her marriage to Edwin Schlossberg, an avant-garde artist and designer, was the cornerstone of this strategy. It was a deliberate choice to build a world for her children, Rose, Tatiana, and Jack, that valued art, literature, and critical thinking over pure political ambition. It was the first quiet attempt to dismantle Camelot from within. They were raising their children not to be princes in a lost kingdom, but to be thoughtful, independent citizens of a new world. Could their early childhood experiences have laid the foundation for later triumphs or tragedies, or perhaps for a rebellion against both? Born on January 19, 1993, Jack Schlossberg was raised in a fortress of carefully constructed normalcy. While the world saw him as the heir to Camelot, his reality on Manhattan's Upper East Side was shaped by a conscious and strategic rebellion against that very notion. His father, Edwin Schlossberg, was the quiet architect of this rebellion. He was the antithesis of the Kennedy political machine. An artist and designer with a PhD, his world was one of galleries, museum installations, and intellectual inquiry. The dinner table conversations that shaped young Jack's mind were not about winning elections, but about solving creative problems, about the intersection of art and technology, about the power of ideas, not just the power of position. This was a profound, life-shaping influence. It gave Jack a different vocabulary, a different lens to see the world. It taught him that a legacy could be curated, questioned, and even redesigned. His education was a continuation of this strategy. He attended the collegiate school in Manhattan, then Yale University. And here, the central conflict of his life begins to take shape. He did not major in political science, the obvious choice for a Kennedy. He chose to study Japanese history. On the surface, it was a nod to his mother's future role as ambassador and his grandfather's past in the Pacific. But psychologically, it was an act of profound distancing. It was a flight from the government building, a deliberate immersion in a culture and a history that had no connection to the myth he was expected to embody. It was a search for a corner of the world that was his alone. After graduating, he continued this journey of escape. He moved to Japan, working for the e-commerce giant Rakuten and the beverage maker Suntory. These were not the actions of a man preparing for a congressional run. They were the actions of someone trying to build a self, independent of the one that had been assigned to him. He was learning about global commerce, about supply chains, about corporate culture, skills with no immediate application in the family business. It was a declaration of independence, but the gravitational pull of the Kennedy name is immense, a force of nature. And this is where the deep internal conflict, the central question of Jack's life, becomes undeniable. After his sojourn in the corporate world of Japan, he made a dramatic reversal. He enrolled at Harvard not just in the law school, but in a dual JD/MBA program with the business school. This was the ultimate power move, the quintessential training for America's ruling class. This was not the resume of a rebel. It was the training of a king in waiting. This single decision lays bare his struggle. Is he truly trying to escape the Kennedy shadow? Or is he simply learning the modern tools needed to master it? The JD/MBA is the ultimate weapon in the arsenal of power and influence. It is the language of Wall Street and Washington, of policy and profit. It begs the question, was he arming himself to dismantle the family enterprise, Or was he preparing for a corporate takeover to lead it into the 21st century? This is the struggle between wanting to be myself and not being able to not be a Kennedy. His actions suggest he is not running away from the game. He is simply learning to play it on a different, more complex board. He is still playing on the Kennedy field, but he is determined to write his own rules. Was the success he achieved truly worth all the pain and internal conflict he endured? His public appearances during this time only deepened the mystery. At the annual Profile and Courage Awards ceremony, he stood beside his mother, looking more and more like his grandfather and uncle with each passing year. He spoke eloquently about public service, about courage, about his grandfather's vision. To the world, he was the dutiful grandson, the keeper of the flame. But behind the scenes, he was forging an identity that seemed to mock the very solemnity of those occasions. His Instagram account was becoming a bizarre, fascinating collage of his inner world. It was here, in the digital realm, that the true rebellion was taking place. He was living a double life, the serious Harvard scholar by day and something else entirely by night. Something new, something unpredictable, and something that the old guard of Kennedy watchers could not possibly understand. To understand Jack Schlossberg, one must look past the hallowed halls of Harvard and the solemn ceremonies in Boston. One must look at his phone. His Instagram account is not merely a social media profile. It is the most revealing document of his internal struggle and his radical generational strategy. It is here that he moves beyond being a mere heir and becomes something far more modern and complex. A brand influencer for the Kennedy legacy. For decades, the Kennedy brand was managed with iron-fisted control. It was a brand of stoic glamour, of windswept sailboats, of tragic nobility. It was polished, perfect, and profoundly inaccessible. Jack is systematically dismantling that image post by post. One day, he shares a heartfelt, beautifully written tribute to his grandmother, Jackie, reaffirming his connection to the myth. The next, he posts a series of shirtless photos from a paddleboarding trip, his captions filled with groan-inducing puns that would make a dad cringe. He creates bizarre lo-fi videos that seem to be inside jokes with himself, celebrating niche pop culture moments or simply mugging for the camera. He is his own content strategy. This is not random youthful folly. This is a calculated remix. He is A/B testing a new Kennedy identity in real time for a Gen Z and millennial audience that has been raised on the internet, an audience that values raw authenticity over curated perfection. The chaotic, self-deprecating, and sometimes frankly weird online persona runs completely counter to the regal image of Camelot. It is a deliberate act of demystification. He is saying, yes, I am the grandson of a president. I carry that weight. But I am also a guy who finds this meme funny, who likes to work out, and who doesn't take himself too seriously. He is making the Kennedy name relatable, accessible, and most importantly, human. He is transforming a historical monument into a living, breathing person. This strategy is made all the more radical when viewed through the spectral shadow of the man he is most often compared to, his uncle, John F. Kennedy, Jr. JFK Jr. was the last carrier of the pure, unadulterated Camelot brand. He was handsome, charming, and lived his life in the relentless glare of the paparazzi, embodying the role of America's prince with a graceful, if sometimes reluctant, charm. His tragic death in 1999 crystallized that image forever, leaving a void of unfulfilled promise. Jack's physical resemblance to his uncle is startling, almost ghostly, a constant reminder of what was lost. But their approaches to their shared legacy could not be more different. JFK Jr. worked within the system of traditional media. Jack bypasses it entirely. He is the first Kennedy who doesn't need the press to stay visible. He's not just a Kennedy in the feed, he controls the feed. He is his own media company, broadcasting directly to his followers with an autonomy his uncle could only have dreamed of. Behind all that glamour of his lineage was there an unbearable loneliness for Jack that nobody saw. A loneliness that drove him to connect in this new, unfiltered way. This online performance is the ultimate expression of his internal conflict. He is both upholding the legacy and subverting it simultaneously. The serious posts about climate change and public service fulfill his duty. The silly, self-aware posts preserve his sanity and his individuality. He has found a way to be a Kennedy without being consumed by it. He has turned the weight of his inheritance into a platform, and he is using that platform in a way that no one in his family has before. He is not just the heir to the brand. He is its new creative director, and he is launching a complete and daring rebrand for a new century. Every dynasty faces moments of internal reckoning, but for a family as scrutinized as the Kennedys, those moments can threaten to shatter the entire myth. For Jack Schlossberg, that moment arrived with the political evolution of his cousin, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. This was not just a disagreement, it was a civil war over the very soul of the Kennedy legacy, and it would force Jack to make the most consequential decision of his life, to become the man who killed Camelot in order to save the Kennedy name. For decades, RFK Jr. was a respected figure, a brilliant and tenacious environmental lawyer who carried the torch of his father's activism. But in recent years, his embrace of anti-vaccine rhetoric and conspiracy theories created a deep, painful rift between him and the mainstream scientific community, and crucially with the core principles of his own family. When he launched an independent presidential campaign, he was leveraging the most powerful asset he had, the Kennedy name. The magic of Camelot. His campaign was built on a foundation of nostalgia for a lost era of truth-telling and rebellion. This presented Jack with an impossible choice. The old rules of Camelot were clear. Family is family. Loyalty is paramount. Disagreements are handled behind closed doors. The clan presents a united front to the world, always. To adhere to this code would be to stand by silently as he watched his grandfather's legacy of reason, science, and public service be, in his view, distorted and co-opted. To break the code would be to commit a kind of public patricide, to attack his own bloodline and shatter the carefully maintained facade of unity. He chose to break the code. In a series of blistering, direct-to-camera videos on his Instagram, Jack did the unthinkable. He publicly denounced his own cousin. Looking straight into the lens, his voice sharp with a controlled fury, he called RFK Jr.'s campaign an embarrassment and a vanity project. He methodically deconstructed his cousin's platform, accusing him of trading in on Camelot celebrity, conspiracy theories, and conflict for his own gain. This was more than a political attack. It was a theological statement. It was a declaration that the Kennedy name is not a birthright to be used however one sees fit. It is a trust, one that comes with a specific set of ideals: faith in progress, respect for institutions, and a commitment to unity. Jack was effectively excommunicating his cousin from the church of the true Kennedy legacy. He was killing the myth of Camelot, the myth of the unbreakable, loyal to a fault clan, to save the core principles of what he believed Kennedy should represent in the 21st century. Did this tragic event mark his downfall in the eyes of some family members? Or was it simply the tipping point where he finally claimed his own power? This act was the culmination of his entire upbringing. It was the artist's son deconstructing a flawed narrative. It was the Harvard-trained lawyer making a case. It was the brand manager protecting the integrity of his product. By attacking his cousin, Jack wasn't just defending a political party. He was defining the terms of his own inheritance. He was making it clear that the torch passed from his grandfather was not a crown to be worn, but a standard to be upheld. It was the most significant, most Kennedy-like thing he had ever done, precisely because it involved tearing down a cherished family myth. He had to destroy the village to save it, and in doing so, he stepped out of the shadow of his ancestors and became a political force in his own right. The aftermath of the storm, of the public war with his own family, did not leave Jack Schlossberg weakened. It left him transformed. By taking a stand, by defining what the Kennedy legacy is not, he was finally free to begin building what it is. He emerged from the conflict no longer as a reluctant prince or a quirky observer, but as a new kind of political figure, one perfectly suited for a fractured digital age, the activist influencer. Having graduated with the formidable toolkit of a Harvard JD and MBA, he possesses the credentials to operate in the highest echelons of power. Yet he has shown little interest in the traditional path. He is not shaking hands at county fairs in Massachusetts or building a donor base for a congressional run. Instead, he is leveraging his true power, his platform. He understands perhaps better than any Kennedy before him that in the 21st century, influence is not solely wielded from elected office. It is wielded through narrative, through content, through the ability to capture attention and shape conversation. If he does not run for office, what does his public service look like? It looks like his continued passionate advocacy for the environment, a cause that connects him to his father's sensibilities and his cousin's earlier celebrated work. He uses his Instagram to break down complex issues about climate change, making them accessible to a generation that might not read policy papers but will watch a 60-second video. He is pioneering a form of digital activism, translating the high-minded ideals of his grandfather's speeches into the shareable, digestible language of social media. He is not waiting for a seat at the table. He has built his own table, and he invites hundreds of thousands of people to it every day. Can anyone ever truly escape from the shadow of their darkest, or in his case, most famous moments? Or is this his way of finally controlling the shadow, bending it to his will? This path places him in a fascinating new class of political descendants, and the comparisons are revealing. Look at Chelsea Clinton, who has embraced the structured, institutional world of her family's global foundation, working firmly within a traditional framework of non-profit power. Look at Meghan McCain, daughter of John McCain, who chose the combative arena of cable news commentary, using her famous name to build a career as a political pundit. Jack is choosing neither path. He is not an institution builder like Clinton, nor is he a professional commentator like McCain. He is a hybrid, a personal brand who engages in activism, a scholar who creates memes. He is forging a new model for a political era in the 21st century, one that is more fluid, more independent, and perhaps more authentic to the moment. Unlike those who either join the family business or reject it entirely, Jack is doing both and neither. He has found a way to remain deeply engaged with the political and social issues that define his family's legacy, but on his own terms, using his own tools. He is demonstrating that it's possible to have a voice without running for office, to exert influence without holding power. This is not a life lived in reaction to his legacy, but a life lived in conversation with it. He is asking a profound question with his every move. In an era of collapsed trust in institutions, could the most powerful political act be to remain outside of them, speaking directly to the people? Were these final decisions of his to forge this unique path acts of surrender to the impossibility of traditional politics, or courageous acts of self-preservation and reinvention? We arrive at the present, at the great unanswered question that is Jack Schlossberg. His journey has been a masterclass in negotiation, a negotiation with history, with tragedy, with the crushing weight of a myth, and with himself. The boy who was shielded from the public eye has become a man who commands it, but in a language the old world is still struggling to learn. He has taken the Kennedy name, a brand synonymous with a specific mid-century American glamour, and he has remixed it, deconstructed it, and rebuilt it in his own image. The mysteries surrounding him are no longer about the past. They are about the future. What will his ultimate legacy be? Has he, in fact, already won? By killing the outdated myth of Camelot, the myth of the perfect, stoic, and tragically doomed family, he may have successfully inoculated the Kennedy name for a new generation. He has made it more resilient, more human, and more relevant. He has traded the gilded cage of the past for the open, chaotic, and powerful landscape of the digital present. Two paths seem to stretch before him. One is the path of tradition. With his intellect, his name, and his Harvard credentials, a run for office is always a possibility, a trump card he can play at any moment. A Senate seat, a governorship, the doors are open. To walk through them would be to fulfill the destiny so many have projected upon him, to finally and fully step into the roles of his grandfather and uncles. It would be the ultimate validation of the Kennedy political dynasty. But there is another path, the one he currently walks. It is the path of the 21st century activist, the cultural commentator, the social entrepreneur. It is a path where he continues to use his platform to advocate for change, to shape public opinion, and to build a different kind of power, one that exists outside the formal structures of government. This path would represent a more radical fulfillment of his grandfather's call to service, redefining the very meaning of what it is to serve. He could become a new kind of elder statesman, a voice of conscience for his generation, without ever holding a single elected title. This is the central fascinating paradox of Jack Schlossberg. Every step he takes away from traditional politics seems to only increase the public's fascination with his political future. Every goofy, self-deprecating post only seems to make his serious interventions more impactful. He is a living embodiment of the struggle between legacy and individuality, a struggle that he has turned into a form of performance art. What hidden secrets might still remain untold behind his public image? Perhaps the greatest secret is that there is no secret plan. There is only a young man, extraordinarily gifted and extraordinarily burdened, trying to navigate an impossible inheritance in the only way he knows how, by being himself, loudly and unapologetically. The final question is not simply, will he run? It is a far more profound one. Has Jack Schlossberg found a clever way to escape the Kennedy destiny? Or has he simply invented a more powerful, more relevant, and more enduring way to fulfill it? The world is watching, and he knows it. He's not asking what he can do for the Kennedy name. He's redefining what it means.